Welcome back to Academy Dialogues. This is our final episode this season, and the conversation today is broadening the aperture of excellence. This conversation is moderated by filmmaker, changemaker, and Academy Governor Ava DuVernay. Joining Ava, two inspiring and highly regarded filmmakers, Julie Dash and Uzan Palsi. On to you, Ava.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you to the Academy for giving us the time, the space, the platform to talk and to, for some of you, learn more about two truly extraordinary filmmakers. These are my cinematic heroes, and I'm so honored. I feel emotional even saying it and being in the room with you both. And it's a virtual room. This is crazy, but I'll take it because I love you both so much. So many people always talk about, Ava, you're the first this, first that, and I never um, lose an opportunity to talk about the women who not only came before, but who I have the opportunity to work beside, because these women are dynamic directors who are working long before I was and who still are. And so I'm so pleased to have Miss Dash, Miss Palsy, the queens, here with us today. And our real goal here is for people who don't know about the dynamic, lush, delicious, acclaimed work of the two of you to get to know it. And so often when I hear you all interviewed, it's talking from a sense of lack, of absence, all the things that happened, all the hardships within the industry. And what I want to do is let this be a real filmmaker conversation about craft, about the way that you see your work as artists, and about your mastery of the craft, because you both are masters. So we shall begin with two Black girls born in the 50s, one in Martinique and one in New York City. Here they are. And I want to know, first films you saw, how did you first start to fall in love with film, right? I know, Zan, you would go to the matinees in Martinique. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to come to love movies?
That's right. We used to go to the the the, um, the priest has a room, that he turned into a theater, and we will go to see movies Sunday after the big service at 11 after 11 a.m. And our parents will go in the evening to see the different kind of movies. So that's where I was able to discover films, for example, like Black Orpheus, from Camus, and I saw for the first time, Black people on screen kissing and loving, and and children, and I was so happy because I had been so starving and frustrated, not seeing our people on screen, and I saw others, of course. There are
Of
some.
course. But, you're in the priest's room, so you've gone to mass, right? Then, then you went into the priest's back room and watched matinee movies. And could you have ever imagined your path then? Can you give us the kind of the 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 summary of how you got from that girl in the priest's room watching Black Orpheus to the set of Sugarcane Alley? What came in between?
But well, you know what happened was that I decided, to make films. I was 10 years old because we are going to the movies all the time, and most of those films will come from Europe or America. And but as I said earlier, I was always frustrated not seeing any black face people like me, and my mother. So after I would see a movie, I would question my parents. I would say, but how come that we are not on the screen? We are absent, And my mother will say, I don't know. And but I will question her so much, and that they will call me Mademoiselle Why, Miss Why, Miss Why this, Miss Why that, and my grandmother will say to me, you know what? I give you 20. I give you 20 minutes if you want to argue, complain about things, but I give you 10 minutes to tell me how you're going to change this, what you want to do to make the difference. And she was talking like that to me. And one day my mother wanted me to get out of, her space, in the kitchen because I kept questioning. And she gave me a book. He said, okay, The book is Sugarcane Alley. In French is Rue Cazenègre, Sugarcane Alley. Sit down, read that book, and please read every single page. Don't flip the page because I want to do the story. I know it by heart myself. But she didn't know that by that simple gesture, to get her peace, that gesture will change her own life because it was just like a hurricane in my body. And I saw my people for the first time in a book, Black folks, children, old people, Africa, Africans. And I said, oh, I want to make a movie with that. And that stick with me for years and years, and that's how, and it was a fierce struggle after that to get the money to make the movie, but that's another.
That's another story. It's always a struggle to make a movie, but I love the fact that you describe it as a hurricane that happened within you. And anyone who has not seen Miss Falsey's classic seminal Sugarcane Alley, then you've missed out, but you can fix it. Go find it and watch her work. Miss Dash, Queen Dash, New York City, rough and tumble. That's what I think of New York City.
Rich projects, that's right.
How did you first start to see films? And at what age? Younger, older?
Oh, I was very young. I just remember there was the Beacon Theater was in the only theater in the Queensbridge Projects across the street from where I grew up on Vernon Boulevard. I used to go to the movies and fall asleep all the time. The movies were different then. There were 2 movies plus 10 cartoons, and they would have to wake me up when it was time to leave. I had really no plans of being a filmmaker. I didn't even know how films were made. I thought the actors were making up the lines as they were going on. I didn't know. But Black Orpheus, I remember that I saw it for the first time on television. My mother woke my sister and myself up from sleep and said, hurry up, come see the television. Black people are on television. And it was Black Orpheus.
Wow.
And it was late at night and it was dubbed. And I realized that I'd never seen a dubbed film before. So it was like, something's a little strange, but everyone was like really hot and moving around, and it was Black people and they were beautiful and they were dancing. It was like, oh, that's just like the people I know, but it's kind of strange. There's something with the voices like, and it was hyper reality. But it was Black Orpheus, and that stuck with me. And to this day, it remains one of my favorite films. But let's leapfrog this. In 1968, I was in high school and I stumbled into a filmmaking workshop in Harlem called the Studio Museum of Harlem. They had a cinematography workshop. We were there for something like 2 weeks. My best friend Wembe and I, we were there for about 2 weeks before we realized it wasn't a still photography class, it was cinematography. So by that time we were hooked. We were watching Jules and Jim and all these foreign films, and Potemkin, Eisenstein's Potemkin, and A Tokyo Story. And I was just hooked at that point. And pretty much like Uzan was saying, at that point, I started wondering, like, why are the films so much better, the foreign films? Why can't we see ourselves on the screen? Why can't we see, renditions of Sula or The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison's work, Alice Walker's work, Gail, the woman who wrote Corregidor, I forget her last name. But that was pretty much, by the time I got into college, that's why I wanted to become a filmmaker, so I could start telling those stories and learning how to tell those stories.
So then you and your feature narrative directorial debut is Daughters of the Dust?
Daughters. The long form. It was the first feature, but I had made quite a few films.
You made quite a few. That's why I asked it as a question, because it's the featured narrative directorial debut was Daughters of the Dust. It just happened to be a lifelong classic, and this the first one. It's fine. And so the two of you are making films and kind of debuting your cinematic voices to the world at around the same time, within a 4 or 5 year window of one another. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about that time, the late 80s, early 90s. And I look at old pictures of the two of you, and I've poured over pictures of the two of you on your sets and all of your publicity photos, and I've read every interview. But I just want you to take us back, because there was so few of you, and yet there were a lot more than it had been, all in that time making. I think you can count about a dozen filmmakers around that time that were making work of note, and yet only a handful of women. And so how that felt being at that renaissance, that Black renaissance of film, late 80s, early 90s, and what the point of view of women within that circle was. Did you all know each other? Were you all talking to each other? Were you supporting each other? Were the Americans in touch with filmmakers who were outside of the country? How was it?
Well, I met Uzan at PBS had a retreat in Utah. Do you remember that? The Sundance retreat?
Yes.
And that's the first time I met her in person, but I knew her films before then. of course, the Rue Castanegras was one of my favorite, because it's a foreign film too. So it was, I knew her. And I also, I started traveling to various international film festivals at a very young age with my short films. We went to London, France, Munich, Venice, all of these places. And so we were interacting with African filmmakers in France, Med Hondo, Idrissa, Sembane, all of these people long before I made Daughters of the Dust. So
okay.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. And Uzan, how do you remember it?
And you know what? I saw Daughters of the Dust when I came to America, actually, because some American film would not go to Europe. And for the very simple reason that even the studio today, they are telling us that, when you bring them a project, well, we won't know how to market this, foreign won't like it, they won't buy it, and it's complicated because the leads are Black, or female don't even talk about that, and that was, so for that pretty reason, very few Americans, American film with Black folks, or like yours, that piece, that beautiful piece, a masterpiece, that, everybody told you about how beautiful the movie was, the people and the directing and the photography, it was fantastic. That I was talking about it with my friend, Jean-Pierre, and because he doesn't know the film, and I said, I will make sure that you see that movie, and then when we met, I was just like, in front of her, of course, because I was so lonely, and that's hard, when you are like that. You believe that you're the only one, you have nobody like you around, and when we met, it was great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's so interesting, that concept of loneliness. And I think I just want to talk about that in the context of, the women who influenced you and came before you. And I know from talking to you and having the honor of you both spending time with me personally, that you both have quite the connection to Kathleen Collins. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time in this space to talk about our beautiful sister, Kathleen Collins. And for people that do not know, regrettably, who she was and what she left behind, can you both talk a little bit about how you knew her and a bit about her work? Uzan, can you start us off?
Yeah, I recall that I was in Boston, and they invited me, there with my film Sugarcane Alley, and there was a screening, a documentary that they did about her, but she was dead. She died a few years for that screening. I didn't know anything about her. And there it is, I'm sitting there watching that woman, that passionate woman, and talking about acting, about, and, she had such fuel, and also she was so, angry, because she wanted to do more, and Hollywood would not give her what she would need just to make her feature films. And she was talking about all kinds of things and talking, and something, when I was watching her and listening to her, I recognized myself, in her, my passion and the fight that, I had to put onto the Sugarcane Alley and all these things. And I started to cry when I understood that, she died from cancer, and young. She was around 40, something like that. Yeah. Oh my God, I started to cry, and I'm saying that I have, oof. And at the end, of the screening and after that festival, I decided to look for her husband, Alfred. And he told me that he was in New York, and they gave me the address, and I called him and I said, I need to talk to you. I need to meet with you. And instead of going back to Paris, I changed my wording and I went to New York. And I sat with him, we had a breakfast. And I said, you don't know me, but I just discovered your a movie about your wife. And I'm just like, bouleversée, as we say in French, I'm so moved, and I would like to do something that she wanted to do. She has other projects, and he told me about, two projects. One with about 3 old, black stars, Hollywood black star, that, that's a story. They took a cruise, in the Caribbean, and they discovered a new world. They discovered life, they had a good time. And he said, well, and she had also a project about the first Negro female pilot, called Bessie Coleman. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, and he said, yes. And guess what? She went to France. She had to expatriate herself to France, for a year, in order to get her license, because, well, it's 1919. So, and I said, you kidding me? In France? Yes. And I said, my God. And I said, okay, I know why. I saw that as a call, and I said, look, I made a promise to you today. I'm making the promise to direct that movie. I want to make that movie for Kathleen. And I said, I have to do that. And then, I went to Chicago, and I met Bessie's relative, one of them, her niece, and I found the grave. I went there, and I kneeled in front of that grave, and I made the same promise to Bessie. And I said, look, I made a promise to Kathleen. Now I'm here, sister. Pray for me wherever you are, because, I'm going through hell after Sugarcane Alley. You don't want my movie, and we will go through hell for your story. So I need all the good vibration that you can send me, so we can make that movie.
And you're going to make that movie, and you're still working on that movie, and I'm helping you make that movie. We're making this movie somehow, but this is Ousmane Falsy's Bessie Coleman. That is a wish project of Kathleen Collins, and this is part of her legacy. Julie, Kathleen Collins, for you, I'm glad that we're taking some time to speak about her influence on you both.
Absolutely. Kathleen Collins. Well, I think I met her about maybe 1971 or 1972. I was in undergraduate school at City College in New York City, of course. And I was assigned a summer work study job with Chamba Productions. Chamba, of course, was headed by St. Clair Bourne, documentary filmmaker. And there were 5 Chamba brothers, Charles Hobson, Garrett, all of them. And they had just come back from shooting a film in the South called Let the Church Say Amen. And a young woman showed up who was going to edit it. And that young woman was Kathleen Collins. And she was fresh out of the Sorbonne in Paris, speaking French, a Black woman speaking French, and she was a vegetarian. So like I always say, like coming out of the projects, I'm like, a vegetarian, okay, what is that exactly? So but anyway, that summer, it was like the summer of Kathleen Collins. She was so friendly and so competent in her craft. She'd be working in the editing bay, and I'd like kind of peek in every now and then. And she said, no, come in. She would say, come in. And I would sit with her and she would just edit. She had a baby, a newborn baby, and sometimes I'd sit with her holding the baby. It was incredible, but I just never forgot her. And then after that, I graduated and went out to Los Angeles, but she started making films of her own, feature films, The Cruz Brothers and Mrs. Malloy, Losing Ground, all of these films. And then we stayed in touch. We saw each other at film festivals and things like that. And then suddenly she passed away, and I went to her service, memorial service. All of us were there, and everyone was a wreck. It was shocking. It was sad. It was tragic because everything was just cut short, just taken away from her. And by that time, she was eating macrobiotics. So I was angry because it was like, this is not fair. She ate well. She was so creative. She was so open and loving and talented. And I just had never met anyone like her before. So she was, like the goddess of film for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important. Thank you for sharing that. I got emotional as you're talking about it. I think it's so important to talk about her because, the Academy, the very platform that has given us this space to talk, has long excluded the voices of women and people of color, in its conversation about history. I'm so encouraged by the new museum that's being put up by the Academy and all the great work being done by all of the folks there, a great coalition of people to really make sure that we recapture so much of what the organization had systemically ignored. And, most of us weren't there at the time that those early decisions are made, but we're here now. And so I'm so happy that both she and both of your work is included in the museum and it's going to be talked about as we go forward. Speaking of your starts and how you came up in that early work, I just want to move into talking a little bit about what many would consider kind of the time when you came on the scene and you were able to present your work to audience, right? And so I'm hoping that you all can talk to me about, the connection and the moments when your work has connected to audience, not necessarily with the most famous films, but the experiences having maybe not the most robust distribution, not the best marketing, but the ways in which, despite all of that, despite lack of consistent industry recognition, you've been able to cultivate an audience for your work. How have you achieved that over these past decades?
Persistence of vision. And not allowing anyone to tell you what you can and can't do. What people don't understand, for the most part, I think is like, for me, I never had dreams of working in Hollywood. I had dreams of being a storyteller. I had dreams of making films and experimenting with ways of telling a story, and that I have done. I made a little Super 8 film years ago, back in the 70s, that played at Filmex, Los Angeles Film Exposition. And today it's been blown up to 35 millimeter. That cracked me up. And it's in distribution. It's a little short. I did another little short called For Women, which won Best Film at the Miami International Film Festival, maybe in 1976 or 79 or something like that. But, you know, it's on the books as having porn, and that's in distribution. So I enjoy what I do. And yes, I wish I had more the opportunity to have more feature-length films, but I have like about 5 other movies made for television, but we could get into that later. I want to hear what Uzan has to say.
About cultivating audience over these years, Uzan, when the industry might not have helped with that, might not have encouraged that, and yet you persisted.
Yeah, you know, it was hell. Let's call a cat a cat. But persistence, you know, is a key thing. You know, you have to keep pushing and pushing the boundaries. And when they get you off the room by the door, you jump, you come back in through the windows. You know, that's what I have been doing, you know, for years. And you do what? I mean, if you can't do feature because you don't want your movies to black, to whatever, you know, not bankable. Well, you do documentaries because I love great documentaries, you know, because about people lives, you know, real things, real life, you know, and or you know, or you do series, you work with a network like I did Ruby Bridges, for example. I did also the aftermath of the Attica uprising called The Killing Yard, and I also did another series, French series, about the populating of the country near Mauritius Island, Île de la Réunion. At that time, it was years ago. It was a period piece in the 17th century, you know, called Bourbon Island. I did two part, you know, series.
And you both moved into television, which would allow you to tell more story. Julie has a beautiful filmography with telefilms. You know, your wonderful work on Rosa Parks with Angela Bassett. So much of the work that you both have done in television. The reason why I asked the question about consistency and how you continue on without the industry providing an audience for you, because I learned so much from that about the idea of mastery. And I use that word, Julie. When I hear the word mastery, I think of Kerry James Marshall. Kerry James Marshall, just one of the finest, the hugest fine artists on the planet, whose work, you know, he can just decide he wants to throw some paint on a canvas and it's going to sell for a cool, I don't know, 20 mil. Yeah. And he was the production designer on Daughters of the Dust. But the idea of mastery, the idea of who gets to choose who is a master, right? We're sitting here on a platform from the Academy, right? And you all have had great achievement. But the idea of mastery being connected to audience and your work, not the achievement, is something that I've learned from both of you, because you are masters, you are auteurs of great note, and yet the industry has never fully acknowledged that and welcomed you and did not help you along, and yet you achieved it. So I want to ask you about that idea of looking back. You see contemporaries of yours who are your white male counterparts, who were immediately considered masters of their field, and the industry rose up to support them. How do you reconcile that day to day and be able to stay healthy in your own work? You know?
Well, it's interesting because I was at AFI at the same time as Amy Heckerling, Mimi Leder, Marshall Herskowitz, Ed Zwick, all of these people who have a long list of feature films that they were able to make. And I look at that sometimes and I say like, I wonder where I would have been or what I could have done. But then on the other side of that is I would not perhaps been able to say, I want Kerry James Marshall to production design my film. if I had been working in the industry. Daughters of the Dust was a very independent film. I would not have been able to say, I want Arthur J for AJ to be the DP on my film.
Right.
Which he was, and he won the award for best cinematography at Sundance for that film. So in many ways, working with masters of art, being able to recognize and pull them in and work with them was a wonderful thing that added to whatever I was trying to do. That, saying you always want to be in a room with people who are smarter than you. Well, I always want to be in a room with people who have a mastery of the craft greater than my own, so I could learn too. And it's just a joy to work with people like that. And I've done that all along. I've also done a lot of museum work, films for museums and commercials, car commercials, and all those things. And on each production, no matter how large or small, I learned something, and it's wonderful.
So you've been able to kind of harmonize that for yourself and, and see the positives in what you were able to do.
Absolutely.
I think it's so important because when I hear people talk about you and Uzan, what I hate is if they only, if they poor. And it's like, you know what? These women are dynamic and vibrant. Uzan, what is your thought about that whole idea of mastery and who gets to be the masters of cinema and how you fit into that?
Well, I would like to say that when I did Sugarcane Alley, I didn't have a production company, but I had the money. I raised the money, and the French government helped me to give me a grant. And I have to, I did the job as the producer's job as well. I wrote the screenplay and I directed the film, and also I acted also as a producer, but I didn't get any credit for that because I didn't care, because I just wanted to make that movie and to pick the very people that will help me, because that was my first film. And even I went to one of the best film school in Paris, but still, and I was the first Black woman, coming out of that school, Rue Lumière Film School. And François Truffaut is the French, the very famous French director, and he's the one who advised me about the crew. He suggested some masters, in different categories, and that's how I was able to build my first crew create the crew, bring people together to do my first film. After that, I didn't want to go to Hollywood to work with Hollywood, because Hollywood never attracted me. I never thought that I would fit in, because it's a total different way of working. If you compare Hollywood and Europe, it's totally different. And in fact, it's Robert Redford, who, it's a long story, but after Sundance, he saw the 5 letters that Warner Brothers sent me to ask me to come, because he loved so much.
We have to go back a step, because Robert Redford, you were in the first Sundance Labs. Robert Redford invited you up when no one knew what Sundance was. He's in the woods. Where is he? What is he doing? Okay, I'll go. And he was also a part of the connection with you to Sony, right? For Dry White Season?
The Dry White Season, yes, with Warner Brothers.
Yeah, Warner Brothers, okay.
Warner Brothers. And because what he did, in fact, when you go to Sundance Lab, you need to have a project. And I came with a book, A Dry White Season, written by Andre Brink. And then, so he was very attentive to my work, and we will have many conversations sitting on the grass, And one day he said, okay, so now you are going back home. What are you going to do? I said, well, I don't know. Yeah, I think that I will go back home. And I showed him the 5 letters that Lucy Fisher from Warner Brothers wrote me to ask me insistently, come and let's work together. We would like to work with you. We adore Sugarcane Alley. And he said, okay, you know that you should go. You should try it. You should try it. And I said, no, I mean, I don't want my life to be miserable because I don't think that I will fit in because I know what I want. I know how I want to do this and to be able to decide for my stories and everything. And that's not the way that Hollywood works. And he said, no, I think that you should go. You are a strong woman. Go and discuss with them and try it. And then he called Lucy Fisher. They put me in the plane, and that's how I arrived in Hollywood. And I came with that project, and it was not easy, you know. Lucy was very happy, you know. She offered me a lot of movies, but I said no. She even offered me oh, sorry, I forget the title, but that's okay. And yes,
But
anyway.
but cut to, you end up directing Marlon Brando and being the first Black director to direct an actor to an Oscar nomination. And you also won the César, right? Was it the César for Dry White Season or for Sugarcane Alley?
No, for Sugarcane Alley, actually, you know, yes, I am the first female director who got a César, the French César, you know, the French Oscar, I would translate for Americans, for a movie. Yes.
And so this idea of mastery, just, do you feel like a master of cinema? Let me ask you that straight up.
A master.
A master. Am I saying the right word in French? Like a master.
No,
Do you feel like?
You know what? I always saw myself like a filmmaker on a mission, you know, and fighting to do. I want to make films, you know.
Yes.
I want to, you know. I used to say that with my camera, that I call my miraculous weapon. Okay, I'm trying to, you know, to heal the wounds. I mean, you know, created by history. You know, I'm trying to, you know, to reveal things that have been hidden or destroyed or, you know, or stolen, you know, and I'm trying to talk about this and to bring people together. Yes. That's what I'm trying to do. And I want to do that I'm doing it, and I try to keep doing it with respect, with love, you know, with, you know, and passion and smile. You know, like yes. My little godmother, Maya Angelou, would say, you know, with style and smile.
That's right. Well, I consider you both masters. And just as we start to wrap up, I want to talk about the things that you have ahead, because I think it's really important that people know that you are filmmakers and you are making work. This is not a time capsule. We're not opening up the old vaults to say, look at what they did. We want to say, look at what they're doing. So I just wanted to invite you to talk a little bit. I'll start with Uzan and end with Julie, about your projects that you're working on now and things that you're excited about.
Well, actually, all the projects that I had, you know, and that were dear to my heart, and that Hollywood rejected for the same reason that we talk about, you know, because they would think that, you know, they are not worthy, you know, to open, you know, a movie and bring audience in the theaters, or to be sold to, you know, to foreign, what was a total lie, a mistake, you know. So now I have been revisiting all those projects because this is the right time. I truly believe I was very patient, and I did other stuff. I did a lot of writing, and I have a few projects on the table, like Bessie Coleman, of course. There are Bessie Coleman, and the story is set, it's you know, in the States and in France. And I also have comedies. I have one that is a multiracial French and American comedies, you know, set in Hollywood, in a very great restaurant. You know, I have also a true story called Blackville. The story takes place in 1864 Baltimore, and Paris and Germany. And it is a biracial love story. And there is everything in it, action, politics. I mean, it's a thriller and it's a big piece.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I have that too on the table. Yeah.
Wow, those are three projects you have in your back pocket. Busy, Miss Dash. You're working on 99 things as well. You're teaching at Spelman.
I'm teaching at Spelman. I have a documentary in progress called Travel Notes of a Geechee Girl, and it's about Verna Mae Smart Grosvenor, who was a culinary anthropologist. She was a close friend. She passed away 2 years ago, and she would advise me on Daughters of Dust. She was from the region too. I'm also working on a film for Lionsgate. We are developing the autobiography of Angela Davis. Yeah, dramatic feature.
Hey.
And we've been working on that for a while. But I have another project, and it's a limited series, and it's called Eleanor Roosevelt's Battalion. And it's about the 850 African-American women who served overseas during World War II. And they're also known as the 6888 Postal Battalion. So that is a project that's really dear to me, and hopefully we could get that going this year.
Yes, very busy. And let me ask you, though all these projects sound amazing, and let me ask you one other question. I just want to ask a craft question, because like I said, so often we're asked about identity, we're asked about our histories, our culture, our community, all of which we love. But as women filmmakers, especially as Black women filmmakers, we're so really asked about craft. So I want to do a speed round.
Okay.
Uzan, speed round. Miss Dash, speed round. I'm going to ask the question and then going to go back to back on the answer. I'm going to try to get in 3. Ready?
Okay.
Okay. When you are on set and you are rolling, do you like to be in Video Village at your monitors, or do you like to be watching the action with your eye? Do you prefer monitors or your eye? Uzan.
The monitors.
Monitors. Julie.
Monitors. I never had monitors before. Now I do. So monitors.
You're like, I've got monitors. I'm not letting them go.
Before. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Rehearsal. Okay. Rehearsal techniques. What is your trick? You have an actor on set, stuck, can't get it, not getting it. Time is ticking. You gotta do something. What do you pull out? What's the Julie Dash trick to get it going? Julie.
I asked them to speak the role of the person they're acting against. So I flip it.
And it frees them up.
Yeah, it frees them up, because then they could understand the other person's position, and then they could go back to theirs and they go, oh.
Ooh, I can use that one.
Yeah.
Who's on?
Well, to answer to that question, I'll take an example. In a dry white season, there is a very tough scene, very emotional scene, when Stanley is a Black guy, the Black South African, the Black cab driver. He get into the white guy, the white lead, co-lead house at Christmas, and so and he came and in fact he came to deliver some kind of bad news, and he's supposed to be crying. He will break in tears and stuff. He couldn't cry. Zexboka, he couldn't cry. So we tried everything, and time was, waning. And I said, okay, we stop everything. And I said, stay put, stay tuned, guys. And I walked outside with him. And I said, Stanley, what is going on? Talk to me fast. He said, I don't know. I can't cry. And I said, okay, you are South African. I know that they kill your brothers. They torture him. They hang him. And they said that he committed suicide. They did the same thing with your dad. You remember when you got the news, how you felt about this? He said, yes. And I said, I want you to go back to that room, have the scene, and then when you get to the floor, then you see your brother, you see your dad, and you remember that emotion. Give it to me. And that's exactly what he did. And he was crying like crazy. you know, that's it.
You tapped into the personal, the backstory. Got it. You make them remember. Third and last question about craft. Why doesn't anyone talk about post? It's part of my favorite part of the process. Love it so much. We have all different parts of post. As a Black woman filmmaker, I'm so rarely asked about my process, and no one asks anybody about post. So we know there's so many different parts of post. What is your favorite part of post? Editorial, music, color, VFX? What's your favorite? Uzan.
Well, I love everything, but I would say my favorite, I would say it's the editing, but also, you know, when we put all the little thing around, you know, and, you know, and to create an atmosphere or at a plus, you know, to things, you know, because I believe that the directing, you know, la mise en scène, you know, it goes that far, you know.
Yes.
Yes. And after you do that, that's the moment that, one of the moments that I love the most. I love the directing a lot, and I love the post. I mean, two things that I adore.
Yeah, yes. What's your favorite part of post, Miss Dash?
Editing, because that's where the film is made.
Yeah.
Editing is a continuation of directing.
Yes.
You start carving out scenes to make them even better.
Even better, even better. Anything that I haven't asked you that you want to make sure we say? Anything?
Well, I would like to very quickly to us to address if Julie, you feel like a message to the young generation, because people are considering us as you know, trailblazers, Julie and I, and you know, but I feel like it hurts me, you know, to realize that the young generation, even if we pave the way, you know, and for many, but that's not the problem. That's, you know, but they don't know about our work, because nobody teaches them about Julie's, you know, Julie's work and about my work. And they don't even know we exist, you know? And I think that there is something that the Academy probably needs to do about it, because, you know, to make them know that we existed, we were there, we did the work, we carry a fight, and the fight is not over, you see, to bring Black folks, because we have been fighting for decades, yes, you know, to bring diversity on the screen. That's what we have been doing, right, Julie?
Yes, absolutely. And I guess the most disheartening thing is when my agent is told that I don't have enough experience.
Oh my God.
What?
How old was your agent? How old was your agent?
Yeah, your agent gives them a mouthful.
Well, I hope so. He's really great, Brown. But that's what I've been told by you know, very episodic producers and showrunners.
But you see, that's why we need to be at the table, just like as decision makers in all departments, screenplay, production, you know, writing, production, and you know, distribution, and behind the camera, in front of the camera, everywhere. Everybody, all the diversity, Native American, Black, African American, Latino, Asian, you know, because yes.
You're right. I want to end this by if you can, first of all, thank you so much for this. If you can direct someone who has never seen any of your work to one scene in any of your films, this is hard. This is a hard one. Okay, y'all made a lot of films and a lot of TV, a lot of beautiful stories. But if there's one scene that you can say, watch this and you will understand a bit more about me, this scene will introduce you to me and my work, what would that be?
Actually, for me, it would be a little unknown film I did with the Urban Bush women called Praise House.
Okay.
And it's about a young artist who doesn't speak, but her grandmother speaks for her.
And what's the scene?
It's a scene of her drawing in a huge Bible, and her grandmother's narrating who she is and what she does, and doesn't understand why she continues on with her art. So it's really quirky.
Okay, all right.
Well,
I
the
like
Burning Bush women are leaping around the place and doing backflips and dancing, and so it's like, yeah, that's kind of me.
That's you. Okay, I'm gonna try to find that. And for you, Miss Palsy.
Well, I guess the scene in Sugarcane Alley, my first film, when that grandmother, she will decide, to go to the capital, 25, 30 kilometers away from her home, her town, just to establish herself, living in a box that they used to carry American car to bring to the country, to Martinique. And then people will take those boxes and transform that in a home for them, the poor people. And she will do that just to take her son, to the school, because he had a grant, and he had to go to school. And how, in that scene, how the people, the colonial, era, and how the people will deal with her and the child, and it's a very moving scene and heartbreaking, but so strong, because that old woman said, okay, they are doing that to discourage me, but you are going to go to their school, okay? And yes, it's about education, because that all my movies are about love, about education, about, also intergenerational, exchange, and about love too. Yeah.
About love. Well, I love you both. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for, I'm not going to start crying, being so loving and kind to me at every time that I've crossed paths with you. When I first showed my film at Sundance, in the very first screening of Middle of Nowhere, a woman stood up in the audience and asked a question in the Q&A, but it wasn't a question. It was Julie Dash, and she was saying that she was proud of me. And it was on, whenever you come to the States, you call me, you make sure that we connect and break bread. You've allowed me to share you with other Black women directors so that they can meet you. You both are huge parts of my journey, and I just want everyone to know about you, what you've done and what you're doing and what you're going to do. So
together. Julie, you and I, you know what?
Yeah.
The three of us,
We're gonna do something together. We've been saying,
yes, let's do that.
Well,
love
you so much. Thank you for having us. We love you.
Thank you for doing this. You all are both so busy and so famous and so fabulous, and it's true. And I feel honored to have been able to talk to you and to have this conversation between the two of you that can always be on the record. What a thrill for people who love films. Love you both. Hi, my name is Ava DuVernay, and for more videos, go to the Oscars channel.